Okay, we're obviously back at it with Texas San Antonio, and it was interesting watching their game against Arizona and then Kansas State. It's the third time we played them in not many years. So we know a lot about them. They know a lot about us. We need to continue to improve in all three phases. There's areas that we had improvement from the last game, which I was pleased with. There's some areas that we need to continue to work at as we progress through the season. But we have a healthy football team. Our energy level, attitude's really good. I like how our coaches are working at this time. So we're into the third week and just moving forward.
Coach Gundy, I have had a point to watch kickoff returns, and it seems to me that more and more teams are starting from the 14-yard line, the 19-yard line, the 11-yard line, and not returning the ball out to the 25-yard line. Is there any thoughts about taking a touchback and starting at the 25?
Well, if the ball's 2 yards deep, our rule is to stay in. It used to be 4, but we start at the 20. 25 is a pretty good starting point. So that's been our rule. I would guess that it would vary based on each team and what they feel or how they feel about their returner.
Let's stay on returns. Did Jalen learn a few things? It seemed like on Saturday night, I know he still seems pretty gutsy about catching balls and protecting field position, but he had that one that I think he misjudged the coverage and even alligator armed it a little bit, and it looked like he fair caught a couple of times after that. Is that the maturation for him as a returner?
Well, he tried to catch the ball drifting away from the defender so he could run, and it wasn't necessarily the alligator arm as much as it was he was trying to catch it and get away from him to run the ball. And then later, there was 2 of them, one for sure that we felt like he should have returned. The good news is that he's catching the ball, he's going and getting it. And there's a process he needs to go through that they all do, that it just takes some time to get used to that. It could be the hardest thing to do for a true freshman is to return punts. It kind of goes against human nature to stand there and look it up in the air when you know you have guys running at you that can hit you. So he's learning, but he's doing good, but he's still aggressive and wants to catch the ball.
Staying on him a little bit, he had the one long pass completion that was brought back. Mm-hmm. Have you had very many freshmen that have come in at that position, the slot receiver, that are quite as explosive as he can be?
He's pretty talented. Well, we'll see as the season moves forward. He runs well, but he seems to, as I mentioned earlier, be aggressive and goes after the ball and makes catches. So hopefully he'll continue to get better each week.
Mike, the other night afterwards, you talked about needing to see the tape on the blocked PATs. What did you see when you went back and looked at that again?
Both were low kicks. Mm-hmm. Protection was fine.
You've got several San Antonio guys in your defense that start and make plays for you. How important have they been to the growth of your defense and everything?
Well, all those Texas guys are important, and we've got a number of players from that Central Texas area, and it's always good for those guys to compete against teams from that part of the state. We get a lot of young men that come and play here because we play so many schools from the state of Texas, but we certainly need all those guys to make plays.
Go back to John with Ben on the PATs and the field goals. Has the low trajectory been a problem? It didn't seem to be in fall camp.
No, it hadn't been an issue at all, and that's something that's on Ben. I mean, it didn't have anything to do with the snap, the hold, or Coach Disher. He's been around long enough and kicked long enough, and he needs to get the ball elevated on PATs. It's real simple.
Mike, you're 10 plus years here now. Has your philosophy on how you practice trying to force turnovers in practice changed at all in terms of having guys swat at the ball or just specific ways to get them ready for game time situations?
I think it's varied some over the last few years. We've allowed more time for it in the spring and preseason than we ever have. Obviously, it hadn't worked. But we certainly have tried to practice and put our players in position to force turnovers.
How is Jordan Burton been one of those JUCO guys who's done enough to make an instant impact, to fill some pretty big shoes that Josh Burton?
Jordan has been mature and he's been physical. He's been durable. He missed 3 or 4 days in the fall camp. He was good through the spring, and he's active, and he's learning on the run. He's one of those players that should be much better in the middle of the season than he is now, just making the adjustment from that level to this level. We talked about that last week. He falls in that category.
You mentioned maturity. A guy who goes and plays for Stephen F. Austin, then goes to JUCO, and then ends up here. Having a road like that, can you see that kind of influence him as just as a person who's had to, kind of travel around a little bit?
I think it's made him realize how good that we have it, the players have it here at Oklahoma State University. He's been on a tough road, and there's those places don't have as much as we do, and he's very appreciative of what we have here.
What's different about David Glidden today, Mike, than 2-3 years ago?
His longer hair, and he still can't get on the rides at Six Flags, but other than that, it's a joke, I mean, hey, he's very savvy, and we talk about the maturity, and Kyle was just asking about Burton. See, Burton's played in 3 games or 2 games, and Glidden's played in 40. And at his position, he's kind of developed himself into being a master at his craft and what he does. Because he certainly doesn't do anything when he's walking by you to make him or to make you think that he's going to be a good football player at this level. But he's just mastered his craft, and he kind of knows where to be at the right time.
So you're 2-0 and you're back in the AP poll. What's your state of mind right now? Are you feeling fairly good, really good?
Oh, I feel fine with where we're at. It's way too early, and I say this each year. You've got to get up through the middle of October to get a good feel for where we're at. We need to make adjustments every week. I like the depth on our defense. I like the speed on our defense. I'm really excited about our kicking game, all the areas except our kicking right now. I like the development of our quarterback. I like the depth we have at receivers. I like the development of our running backs, and we need to become better run blockers. We've improved in some of those areas, but up to this point, I was pretty much right on where I thought we would be in the areas we need to improve at, and how much further we had developed ourselves in those areas, but we're certainly not there. So we have a long ways to go, but we're in good shape because we've won 2 games.
Continuity that you prefer to have on the offensive line. Are coaches more hesitant to make personnel moves there than any other position group?
Not necessarily. I don't think a personnel move is really where we're at. I think that we just, teams that have played us have defended us so we can't run the football. And when that happens, there's 2 ways to handle it. You throw a lot of passes, or you're just physically better up front, and your tailback is much better than the defense is at tackling, and you just say that we're not concerning ourselves with the structure of the defense. We're not in a position to do that right now. We're better up front. We have a long ways to go. Our tailbacks are better. We're gonna get more big plays, in my opinion, which we already have, when plays weren't blocked correctly. We've talked about this for a month now. So I think we've made strides in those areas, but we still have a ways to go.
The reason I mentioned the word personnel is because I remember when Crabtree came back last year, and you had Jesse Robinson in at right guard, for the better game and beyond. It just seemed like everything functioned at a little better level.
Yeah, Jesse's doing well, and right now we feel like that Paul's performing better than he is. But it's not ever a situation where we couldn't roll somebody in and take a shot at it. There was a period during those games, though, we weren't a great running football team. And right now we're not even a good running football team, but we're better than where we were last year. I know that sounds a little sketchy, but that's kind of where we're at. We need to continue to improve. We need to pump the ball to those guys. But the truth of the matter is, if they're all going to be down in the box, where if it is blocked correctly and a safety standing there for a 2-yard gain, you better be really good at running back or throw passes.
Would you consider this an accurate way to portray that? Because you did not get hardly any chunk plays out of the run game last year. First 2 games, you had some chunk plays, You just haven't had the consistent 4 or 5 yards a pop. Is that a
Kind of. The defense we're playing this week, in our opinion, will be the best one we've seen up to this point, with their ability to run sideways, the strength, their corners. And so we'll know a little bit more about our team, but then as the season progresses, we'll know a lot more. That's why I always bring up the middle of October. It's when you kind of really find out where you're at. I don't think there's any question that we have identified where we need to improve, just like you guys have. But we're working toward that. And as I mentioned in preseason, it's not going to happen overnight. It never has. It takes time to develop into where we need to go. But I think we can get there. We just got to stay consistent, be patient, don't overreact as coaches, and make sure our players are healthy and fresh and improving each week.
Rennie said that one of the things that you preach to the running backs is if they get caught for a negative play and it wasn't blocked well, to keep their poker face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the importance of that. I mean, that seems like maybe a less important thing, but how important is that in your mind?
Well, body language and attitude is really important to our team, and I think that's the only way that any organization or group of people can work over the long haul. And it's not going to always be the way we want it to be. We want to win every football game we play. That may not happen. We want to block every run correctly. We don't want him to miss a cut. Sometimes it's not going to work out exactly the way we want it. So there's no reason to show disgust or anger toward a block or yourself when it's not going to really factor into the next play. You're just wasting your time. You might as well just get up and go play the next play. And we've always preached that with our players, and we believe in doing everything possible to keep a poker face in competition. I think that's really important for players and coaches. And I'm just glad Rennie's listened. I didn't know he ever paid enough attention to take that to heart. But Rennie's playing better, right? Rennie's running harder and needs more carries. In our opinion, Chris needs to average 18 or 20 carries. Rennie deserves to get 12 or 14, and the little guy needs to get 6 or 8 right now. We're trying to get enough plays in the game for that to happen, all while being able to throw the ball down the field 45 times or however many it's going to take based on the defensive structures we see each week.
More than likely, this will probably be Larry Coker's last game to coach in the state of Oklahoma. I mean, if you look at all the people who have been important in influencing you as a football guy, where does Larry Coker stand?
I think he's a real or is very important to our profession, guys like him that have done well everywhere they've been. They're a class act. He's always done things the right way. I enjoyed playing for him because we had a mature relationship. We could talk, and he coached and made it very clear if I was doing something wrong and corrected it. But we would have communication, talk during games, and watch tape as I matured in my career, and I could say, we could do this, or this, and he'd say, yeah, that's right, and we'd do it. So I appreciated that, and I said this morning on my teleconference. I'm not sure what happened in Miami. Obviously it's somebody else's opinion, but the guy won a lot of football games and was doing really well. And he's a good football coach. They're very sound. Each group, we've had different line coaches here every time we've played them, I think. And each line coach has thought that these guys are really fundamentally sound in their technique and what they do in their alignment. And that's a tribute to the head coach, that they play the game the way it should be played.
Mike Taylor, obviously a large human being, and that stands out to outsiders. But as you've watched him play a more significant role these first 2 games, what's impressed you about him?
One, he's another player that I guess I talk about that just goes about his business. Very seldom do you hear him say much, and those guys are always high on my list because they enjoy being out there. The team likes them. They're unselfish. They celebrate with their teammates. It's not all about them, and he kind of falls in that category. He's another player, Jenny, that we're going to know a lot about in 4 weeks. He's played well up to this point each week, including this week. This team, in our opinion, is the best team that we've played. And so each game will get harder as we progress. We'll know a lot about him in a month, but he's done very well up to this point in the season.
Mike, when Chris Carson jumps over and it's straight up and goes flying through the air, OSU fans love it. But as a coach, when you see him do that, does that make you cringe a little bit, just being that maybe he puts himself in a dangerous position?
Not really. I want him to run however he wants to run, and that style is okay. I think it's good for our team. Gives me something to watch on YouTube with my kids on Sunday because they don't pay attention at the games much. So we watched it on Sunday morning before I came to work, and he has to develop his own style or continue his own style of running, and something makes him do that. You see a lot of players that are really good running backs that never leave the ground. For whatever reason, he's done that several times, and he likes to leave the ground. And if that's what makes him comfortable and that's what makes him feel like he's running hard, then I'll support him.
I would think most quarterbacks have, they're like golfers or basketball players, certain spots on the floor or on the field or on the course for different, you know what I mean?
Sure.
That they really prefer. Rudolph really seems to use all 53 yards of the field, of the width of the field. Did he show you that in high school, or has he really kind of developed that here?
Yeah, I think that comes from Yursich and their plan and the way that we want to attack a defense, and we want to use the field. Obviously, it's an advantage to stretch them both ways. Sometimes we don't have that luxury just based on where the strengths are in our offense. He has done a good job of that. And after the game, I had said he had missed 6 throws. He only missed 3 throws. 3 were poor routes that our receivers had run, and that's why I probably shouldn't say as much after games as I do. And I'd commented that he needs to, hit more throws than that. And missing 3 to 4 throws is fairly common for a quarterback that's going to throw the ball 35 to 40 times a game. So he has done a good job of using the width of the field, but most of that is strategically planned through the offensive staff prior to the game.
That it went after the game to see that it had been a 400-yard night for him. Did it surprise you too?
Well, I knew he hit a lot of big passes, and in fact, we had another one. I think he had another 50-yarder or so called back. So I knew that we had big chunks throwing the ball down the field based on where their safeties were playing. Obviously didn't keep track of the actual yards, but I knew that we had thrown for quite a few yards just from the big plays.
Mike, there were several of us that spoke to you after your second camp scrimmage, and it was kind of a mini scrimmage or slighter than the first one. And you said at that point, we're going to shut this down. We don't have to do this much more, if at all, because, and you even used the word violent, and I've heard some of the defenders use it. They've really carried that over, even though there were tackling problems in the first game. Talk about your defense's physicality and whether you're happy with it or not.
Well, again, we need a month from now we'll know a lot more. Up to this point, I'm pleased with where we're at. We tackled better in the last game than we did the first game. And this team that we're going to play this week does a good job of getting out on the perimeter some with their fly sweeps. They crack block. You're going to have to replace tackle in space, things like that. And we're making some strides, but there's not any secret early in the year we don't tackle as well as we need to in the middle of the season because we don't have all-out scrimmages. We don't go to the ground in spring. We don't do it in the fall. So for that reason, you suffer some early in the season. That's just a decision and a choice that we make as a coach, or I guess I make it as a coach, that I want to get to the season healthy, I want to be fresh, and I want to progress. And that's why I'm not fired up about playing certain teams early in the season because we're not really prepared. As the season moves on, we need to tackle better each week. And that happens through reps and practice time. We have more. We've had how many more practices since the preparation of the very first game? Well, each practice we should get better based on the amount of time we spend tackling. So up front, we've been fairly physical. We've done a good job, in my opinion, of stopping teams from rushing the football. If we continue to do that and develop our tackling as the season goes on, then we should be a pretty good defense.
On top of just the tackling, though, just collision violence, just being willing to stick your nose in somewhere. That seems to be pretty good.
We haven't had many guys turn down collisions. In that second scrimmage in preseason camp, we had quite a bit of that on both sides of the ball, and so I wasn't real fired up about watching that, and that's why I slowed it down. And so for that reason, we suffered a little bit in the first game, and even this game, some tackling. But as far as being physical, we don't really have players out there that'll turn it down or even somewhat tentative, in my opinion. And if you look at the guys we have out there now, they're mature. The ends, and then Mote and Vince and Eric, and then when you look at the backers with Seth and Ryan and 20, and then the corners, there's 4 of those guys, and Michael played at Indiana for 4 years. And then with your safeties, with Stearns and Flowers and even Jarrell and Dylan Harding, those guys all have shown signs of wanting to tackle and will stick their face in there.
how good the punt coverage has been lately. Is a lot of that credit go to Zach?
He's really doing a good job punting. I'm almost don't want to. You know how you don't talk about no hitters in the 8th inning. I don't want to talk about his punting. Because he's really doing a nice job. But he's very squared away. He's another guy that I don't hardly ever talk. Maybe just nobody wants to talk to me. But he very seldom says anything. Goes about his business, and has really. You guys may remember I talked about being able to locate his punts. He's located his punts and gotten them where we want him, so it makes us a better cover team.
When he, at the very beginning of what became a real hot streak for him last year, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly or not, but it seemed like he had some little mechanical adjustments, maybe a plant foot or an approach or
Last year?
handling. Yeah.
They did, and a mechanical adjustment was what I was told, but I don't know enough about it to comment on it, but you're correct, yes.
So are you ready to dial that back up? Whatever that
I
was?
heard somebody say something about a mechanical adjustment last night, so I said I was ready for it.
Looking at YouTube yesterday, did you see your horse lose his mind out here a couple of times?
No, my 10-year-old only punched in Chris Carson hurdling. He didn't punch in anything about Bullet.
You were aware of that?
Somebody told me prior to the game, but I have not seen it. Now, I did see him doing a little bit of it. He looked like a bronco buck after that one touchdown. He was. It took so long to score. He probably felt the same way I did. So, but I saw him kind of moving around a little bit. They may need to trade him in for a rodeo horse. Yeah. That's what I heard. Yeah, and she's okay though, right? Yeah, she's fine. Yeah, I was just asking. They said she was fine. So I'm going to guess that if she's on a horse, she's probably tough enough to handle not getting bucked off. Not that it's not hard, and not that I want to try it. So.
Anything else?
Anything else? All right.